710 hours, July 12, 2025, 220 nautical miles southeast of Wake Island, the calm waters of the Pacific suddenly shudder. Without warning, an unidentified UAV detonates just off the starboard side of the supply ship USNS John Lenthal. The shockwave rattles the entire deck. This is no malfunction, no accident. It is a signal, a deliberate warning from China. Within half a minute, the situation escalates. 3 Chengdu J-20 stealth fighters descend from high altitude. At the same moment, a Chinese Type 055 destroyer powers up its combat radar, driving deep into waters controlled by the United States. Beneath the ocean's surface, the sonar aboard USS South Dakota detects a faint but unmistakable signature, the acoustic fingerprint of a Type 093, a nuclear attack submarine, sliding through the thermic line in near silence. China has just executed a coordinated, triple-layered maneuver air, surface, and subsurface an operation that surpasses conventional tactical boundaries. But the response from the United States is nearly instantaneous. In less than 20 seconds, SPY-6 radars sweep and lock onto 9 simultaneous targets. SM-6 interceptors are armed and launched. F-35C Lightning II fighters roar into formation, engines screaming as the American supercarrier braces for its most critical test in decades, the Pacific, moments earlier. At 0710 hours, the ocean seemed deceptively calm. The USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group advanced at a steady 18 knots, maintaining its patrol nearly 220 nautical miles south of Wake Island. The scene was routine, no alerts, no alarms, only the constant hum of turbines and the rhythmic pulse of radar sweeps. A thin veil of fog draped across the sea, parted occasionally by warm Pacific breezes. Then the stillness fractured. The SPY-6 radar aboard the Ford picked up not 1 but 3 anomalies simultaneously, an unidentified object at 29,000 feet. A drone cutting low through cloud cover, 70 nautical miles distant. And far below, the USS Thomas Hudner's sonar detected an ultra-low acoustic signature, steady, deliberate, and unmistakable. A Chinese Type 093 submarine gliding in silence at depth. In less than a minute and a half, the situation inverted. What was once routine patrol became a calculated entrapment. The strike group found itself caught in a geospatial netter tridomain, offensive pattern unfolding without a single declaration of war. Suddenly, the unidentified drone plummeted. It dropped altitude sharply, veered off course, and exploded just 600 yards ahead of the USS Preble. A towering column of seawater shot skyward like a spear, crashing down onto the destroyer's deck. Salt spray-drenched radar clusters and a surge of static forced the crew to cut power to a damaged secondary array before fire could break out. Within 90 seconds, the formation escalated to yellow alert. This was no reconnaissance flyby, it was a precision test, a probe engineered to measure U.S. limits down to the yard. From the west came the next challenge, emissions from a Chinese Type 055 destroyer, its powerful radar sweeping at an oblique angle, deliberately alternating frequencies. It remained just outside firing range, yet its shifting signals revealed textbook electronic probing. Then, for 2:44 seconds, something extraordinary occurred. The Ford's SPY-6 radar suffered a phase distortion. Combat Information Center screens flashed crimson. A phantom missile target appeared then vanished. An illusion, but one designed to test reactions. Never before had China pushed this deep, this aggressively, wagering on American restraint. At that exact moment, the Hudner's combat room lit up with alarms. A J-20 fighter pierced the 10 nautical mile boundary, forcing the SM-6 interceptor system into auto-load. A launch tube reoriented, the crew's breaths froze, awaiting the fire order. Then 7 seconds later, the radar reevaluated. Classification unidentified, stand down, stand down. The order rang through the intercom, tension uncoiled by a thread, but China was not executing the old doctrine of layered advance. This was something new. Instead of rigid parallel formations, their assets split into dispersed micro-units. High-altitude J-20s flew in sweeping arcs, radar offset, minimizing detection while seeking reflections. UAVs circled low at 5,000 feet, cutting transmissions. Every 17 seconds behavior mirroring passive reconnaissance drones. Below, the Type 093A submarine hugged 300 meters depth, concealed by the thermic line, its signature nearly indistinguishable from background noise. The U.S. Navy recalibrated instantly. The USS Polygnatus moved east, forming a corridor for drone response. The Hudner pulled back, shifting to rearguard sonar coverage. At the center, the Gerald R. Ford held steady, advancing neither forward nor back, no provocation, no retreat, just silence. But this silence was charged, a silence so taut it could snap into violence at any second. On the tactical displays, the situation resembled a tightening net: aircraft above, destroyers on the surface, submarines below. A fully formed encirclement, no weapons discharged. Yet the stakes could not be higher. If China succeeded, it would mark the first time a U.S. carrier strike group had been subjected to a functioning triple-layer suppression model without a single shot fired. A seismic shift in Pacific doctrine, the question was no longer if a clash would come, but how. Soon, the American response. Barely minutes after the Chinese formation stabilized on radar, the decks of the Gerald R. Ford came alive with precision. 20 A-18G Growlers surged skyward, afterburners igniting as they accelerated into the southeastern quadrant. Each carried a LQ-49 electronic warfare pods, spinning up to form an invisible shield of jamming power around the carrier group. Above them, an E-D Hawkeye climbed to 28,000 feet. It's an APY-9 radar swept in perfect circles, capturing every movement within a 400 nautical mile radius. Meanwhile, F-35C Lightning II fighters rolled from the hangar, fully armed but flying in defensive posture. Their weapons remained cold, target locks withheld. Unless the Chinese perimeter encroached further, every layer of defense was active, not for demonstration, but because hesitation meant vulnerability. The carrier strike group was now a fortress under pressure, holding its breath against the sharpest provocation in years. The Pacific no longer whispered with calm, it thundered with restraint, and every second that passed pressed closer to the breaking point. Steel birds never need words. Their mere presence declares that the next move will not be a rehearsal. Beneath the ocean, sonar from the USS South Dakota constructs a three-dimensional map of the Pacific floor. Then a peculiar acoustic trail emerges, its signature mistakably tied to a Chinese Type 093, a nuclear attack submarine. It's traced just 15 nautical miles from the American carrier group, hugging the seabed. This is no longer a drill. This is an invisible grip tightening around every layer of U.S. naval response. Suddenly, a low-flying drone from the southeast plunges into the sea, striking less than 0.7 nautical miles from the USS John Lenthal. The impact sends a 20-meter high plume skyward, shockwaves slamming against the hull. Within 8 seconds, the USS Gerald R. Ford's alert status surges to red. The entire radar network pivots into tactical cross-scan. No casualties, but no one mistakes it for an accident. Inside the Ford's Combat Command Center, the tactical map reshapes itself. No longer a scatter of passive dots, it unfolds into four converging threats: surface ships pressing from the north, a submarine from the southwest, UAVs swarming from the northeast sky, and J-20 stealth fighters appearing from the southern horizon. Analysts weigh to possibilities: a calculated showcase of technology or a precursor to a new kind of strike, not by missiles but by psychological and systemic pressure. With each minute, the balance tilts toward the latter. China is attempting what no rival has dared, forcing the U.S. Navy into silence at the center of a vital artery. Below the waves, the Type 093A shifts frequencies. In the air, UAVs veer, extending past 150 nautical miles. J-20s hover in a disciplined flower formation, neither retreating nor diving in. Each platform operates independently, yet together they weave a vast regional jamming net. The American fleet recognizes the pattern. This is a coordinated stress test, probing response speed, command cohesion, and tactical nerve, then escalation arrives. A J-20 abruptly drops altitude, skimming the reaction zone's edge, passing within 9 nautical miles of the USS Hudner. An F-35C locks on, and SM-6 is cued. For 6 seconds, the order hold fire reverberates across the comms. At the final instant, the J-20 veers skyward, vanishing into cloud cover. Almost in tandem, the radar of a Chinese Type 055 destroyer shifts. From passive search to active tracking, 28 seconds of unwavering focus on the USS Ford. It stops just short of triggering automatic retaliation. The U.S. lead elevates to immediate combat readiness, but the standoff is only beginning. At 0716, the Type 346 radar aboard another Type 055 pins a fire control quality locked directly onto the Ford's centerline. This is no longer surveillance, it's aggression pressing against the red line. Nearly at the same time, a Type 05D destroyer off the port flank activates its own tracking radar, lower in intensity yet sufficient to register on the Hudner's early warning suite as semi-active lock to radars, to angles, forcing the Ford's Aegis system to split bandwidth under pressure. Inside the Combat Information Center, alarms surge. Screens flash double red, radar sweeps slow. Launch tubes swivel into position, the audio warning tone shifts from 1 Hz to half, signaling imminent engagement. The Hudner cycles to ready to fire. -1 to 6 cells open, missiles sit armed, engines in passive standby. One more radar deviation, just one, and the entire weapons network would ignite automatically. Beneath, the South Dakota continues to shadow the Type 093A. At the same instant the surface radars lock, its sonar picks up a short, deliberate acoustic pulse-off and used to align submarine launch tubes. Coincidence or the opening signal of something darker? The American formation holds its line. No missiles yet, but every system recalibrates reaction times, down to fractions of a second. At 0718, a heat signature bursts into detection southeast of the Grupan area under no established control. It races low, under Mach 1, steady at less than 1,000 feet. No IFF beacon, no nationality, just a vector aimed straight at the John Lenthal. Within 7 seconds, analysis is complete. For seconds later, directives move across the net. An SM-6 streaks skyward from the Hudner, spiraling fast. Its radar goes live, infrared sensors locked to target. At 90,000 feet, it flips to terminal. Guidance 13 seconds later impact. The threat is destroyed, debris never breaches the defense perimeter. But even as the missile strikes, another UAV slips into the formation's center gap. Unarmed, unjammed, yet circling deliberately over the interception site. Its sensors soak up electromagnetic and optical data, clearly designed to study the -1 to 6 response in real time. For 31 seconds, it hovers. Then, silently, it pulls back, vanishing from SPY-6 detection. A line has been crossed, a missile has been fired, and now silence becomes its own weapon. The line was redrawn with a single SM-6 strike. Yet even that wasn't the decisive blow of this confrontation. What came next was far more telling. Brace yourself, because now you'll witness the full weight of the United States Navy, time-stamped at 0740 hours. For nearly 30 minutes, the American fleet had been operating in a purely defensive posture, absorbing pressure, calculating patterns, and conserving its strength. But at that moment, the shadow game ended, orders went out. The USS Gerald R. Ford was to unleash its full tactical air wing. Almost instantly, 48 aircraft launched in unison. The skies filled with F-35Cs, EA-18G Growlers, and E-2D Hawkeyes. Within just 4 minutes, they had seized aerial dominance. No warning calls, no declarations, only silent precision. Across the strike group, every combat system shifted from guarded readiness into active execution mode. The Growlers led the charge, flying in a staggered triangle formation. The first pair established an electronic warfare zone that extended like an invisible wall. Their ALQ-99 pods and next-generation jamming suites roared to life at full capacity. Within 30 seconds, enemy radar systems began collapsing into chaos. Screens filled with flickering echoes, false contacts appeared and vanished, lock-ons failed. One J-20 fighter tried to push through, climbing sharply to secure a firing solution. But the moment it entered engagement range, its own guidance signals evaporated into static. Deprived of target clarity, it broke away in silence, unable to tell real threats from illusions. The F-35Cs, meanwhile, executed their layered deployment. 3 altitude tiers formed: 3,200 feet, 2,200 feet, and 1,400 feet. Therein, APG-81 radars worked out in isolation but as a single distributed web. If one jet marked a target, every pilot in the formation saw it instantly. If one enemy drifted into range, the entire squadron automatically gained an intercept vector. This was synchronized warfare, not one-on-one duels. The adversary couldn't keep up. Then came a sudden spike on the network, a low-flying UAV racing in from the southeast. Immediately, a low-tier F-35C banked into a 37 turn, closing at 1 point to nautical miles. No missiles were fired, but its targeting lights blinked 3 times a silent but unambiguous warning. Do not advance. Beneath the waves, the USS South Dakota had been stalking its prey. At 110 meters depth, it had tracked a Type 093 submarine for over half an hour. Now it shifted course and surfaced just 5 nautical miles away. The ocean erupted around it in a muted geyser of displaced water. The Chinese sub froze, unable to respond. Its sonar was blinded, its navigation signals scrambled by the South Dakota's low-frequency active sonar. This wasn't a gesture, it was a statement. The seabed was under American control. High above, the E-D Hawkeye beamed its entire tactical picture to the Ford and her escorting destroyers. A complete battlefield map unfolded: aircraft positions, ship trajectories, submarine depths. Every layer of the battle space aligned in real time. Enemy movements were projected nearly 20 seconds ahead, giving the carrier group more than enough time to respond with surgical precision. At 07:06, one last J-20 attempted a westward flank. It had barely brushed the edge of radar range when an F-35C locked onto it from behind, hidden in its blind spot. A vapor trail carved the sky, then snapped into a sharp angle. The infrared system found its mark. Still, the American jet held fire, shifting into observation mode. The Chinese pilot immediately broke off, retreating without resistance. Back on the Ford's command deck, incoming data painted the truth. All enemy vessels had reduced speed, shifted course, and were steadily withdrawing. No formal signal was given, no concession spoken aloud, but everyone watching understood. The contest had been decided without a trigger pull. Victory through dominance, not destruction. By 07:04, silence had settled over the battle space. The Type 055 destroyer turned northwest, radar emissions cutting out. The J-20s pulled back beyond the perimeter. An unidentified UAV tumbled from the sky, crashing into the sea just 4 miles from the USS Hudner after its navigation system collapsed under electronic assault. Another J-20 was forced into an emergency landing at Hainan Island, its communications blacked out by white noise for 9 uninterrupted minutes. Underwater, the Type 093 surfaced again, its stealth rendered useless by relentless sonar pings. From the South Dakota, by 07:08, civilian traffic resumed. A Panama-flagged container ship steamed through at full speed without escort. A South Korean LNG carrier acknowledged a Navy safety directive and proceeded unhindered. Confidence had returned. The Ford and her escorts maintained formation, radar screens humming, with a single F-35C maintaining overwatch at 32,000 feet. Even the USS Seawolf revealed its presence, surfacing calmly in unspoken